Hi everybody, it's 16th of February and we have another Waltons interview. Today we have the multi-talented Jon Walmsley. Welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you. When you were growing up in the Waltons and you got all this fame, what was it like for you as a youngster dealing with this fame?
Well, as a kid, it was great. I enjoyed it. There really wasn't much of a downside at that point. It was initially it was fun to be recognized. I remember, running into a little old lady in the supermarket one day. It's funny because people don't always know your name. They recognize your face, and she said, you're you, aren't you? And I said, yes, I am. Things like that. Then one day in a car park, somebody said, are you on the Waltons? And I said, yes, I am. And they said, prove it. I didn't know what to say. I thought I should get out my driver's license or something.
Now, how long have you been in the UK? Because I know that you're originally from the UK, aren't you?
That's right, Lancashire. Yeah, I was born in Blackburn.
That's just crazy. So tell me that story then, life before the Waltons. You were born in Blackburn. How did you end up in the Waltons in Hollywood?
Well, we ended up my family ended up in California because my mother's Uncle Jack, had gone to live in San Diego. And he loved it and he raved about it. And he said to my mum, California is a wonderful place to bring up a child. So she said, right, we're going. And my dad said, we can't do that. She said, yes, we can. And 6 weeks later, we were there. So, you didn't fool around with mum.
So how did you land the role in the Waltons?
Well, I had started acting a few years prior to that. And my first, my entree into showbiz was as a musician, as a guitarist. And I started playing guitar when I was 8. That was 1964. So I've given away how old I am. You can do the maths. So really, I was always interested in music. And but the thing was, in 1964, when the Beatles came over to the US, and they were sort of local lads. My grandmom had written to me about them and said, "Oh, there's these 4 lads, from Lancashire, and they're great, and you'd love them." So I knew about them before they came to the US, and of course that was a huge thing for millions of kids in the US, and I didn't know it at the time, but thousands of musical careers were launched that day. I've read and talked to so many people who said that was the day I decided to go into music. And that's how it was for me. And I started guitar lessons shortly after and doing little performances, and then got invited to perform on a local television show and was seen by a producer and was introduced to an agent, and the agent started sending me out for acting roles. And I started acting professionally at 10. And I was in high school. I was 15 when we did The Homecoming, which was sort of the pilot for the Waltons. And that ended up being the series.
Did you have to audition?
I did. Mum picked me up from school and she said, you've got an audition at CBS. And they want a red-haired boy with freckles who plays the harmonica. She said, and I brought your harmonica. So we went off to CBS and met the producer, the director, and Earl Hamner, the creator of the Waltons. And I read my 2 lines in Homecoming, and said, I brought my harmonica. Would you like to hear something? So I played some little, folk tune, "Oh Susanna" or something. And or actually, maybe I did a little John Mayall bit. I don't know. But anyway, they liked it, and I got the part.
Wow. Well, that you just answered a question. But we've been getting some questions from your fans as well, from all over the
Oh,
world.
good.
And one of them had a question about your audition. And let me just see. The yes, Kathy from Massachusetts had asked if you had to play a
Right.
song for if you had to play a song for the audition and what it was. Well, you've just told us that.
Yeah, I didn't have to, but I did.
You did it voluntarily.
Yeah, they didn't ask me to, and to be honest, the musical thing, the musical aspect to the character of Jason. At first, it was just a small aspect. It's something they could have dropped if they'd hired somebody who couldn't play. That might have just disappeared. But as I could, and I played guitar and harmonica and piano, they started including that in the series.
Now, we have another question asking, uh, which of the songs that you sang in the Waltons did you write, if any?
There were quite a few, actually. I wrote the Ironing Board Blues. There was one called Antoinette. There was one called Oh, Will You Be Mine, which I sang with Erin Moran. There was one called The Maiden and the Soldier that I sang in the schoolyard. And there were all kinds of little bits. It actually was a lovely thing because the songs were published as they need to be when they're in a television program. So I started getting royalties from having written the tunes. And I didn't realize it as I was doing it, but we'd be on the set, and Jason would have his guitar, and they'd say, "Oh, just play a little something, just ad lib something, at the start of the scene, and then we'll go into the dialogue." So I just start, noodling on something. Little did I know that they were copywriting those pieces as we went along, and I started getting the royalty statements, and it would say Jon's guitar noodling, right? And I was getting paid for it. So it was just a few pennies, but it was great, really. So, I still get a few measly pennies every now and then.
Now, you mentioned there about some of the different instruments you play. I think you're underselling yourself there because from what I hear, you play, is it something like 12 or 16 or 19 different instruments?
Well, the number keeps going up. But it's like, the more the story gets told, the more instruments I play. I think at one time I used to say 13, but I don't even know. I don't even know what I was counting at the time. But yeah, I've played a lot of things during over the years. Really, I'm a guitarist more than anything. More. I think more than an actor or a singer or a songwriter or a producer. I think playing the guitar is what I do best in life. And that really has been my job all my life. It got me into acting, so it's responsible for all of that. And then it was my job after that, playing gigs and playing in the studio and everything really.
Now, for those who don't realise, Jon is a very accomplished musician and blues guitarist. Now, are you still performing now, Jon? Do you still perform as much?
Not as much. Occasionally, my wife and I were in the U.S. This fall, and I had a gig there in Indiana. Hello, Indiana. Hello, Greensburg. Which is a little town, right in the middle of the U.S. That most people have never heard of. But it was great. It was great. And somebody in the U.S. said, why did you do a gig in Greensburg, Indiana? And I said, because they asked. That was it. Yeah. Yeah. It was, would you like to play? Here's some money. Yeah, I'm there.
It's been 50 years since you guys started with the Waltons, and I believe you're going over to see your old friends next week or the week after. I think, are you going to the wedding?
That's right. Yes, Eric Scott's lovely daughter Ashley is getting married, and just can't wait to see everybody. It'll be fantastic. It's literally going to be a family reunion. because that's how we think of each other. And, it sounds corny and all that, but it's really true. And I have to say that the greatest, the most meaningful takeaway, personally, for me, from the Waltons is those relationships that we've maintained over the years.
When was the last time you were all together? Oh, you would have been together for the 50-year anniversary, of course.
Right. We were together in the fall, following the week after this little gig I did in Indiana. We all met up in a bunch of us met up in Missouri, another little town, and for an event there, and it was just lovely. It's always lovely.
Now, what's your favourite memories of Ralph and Will? I'd like to hear some of your favourite memories of those actors.
Oh gosh, well I've got great memories. Everyone, Ralph. Well, first of all, both of them. Ralph, who played the father, Jon Walton. Both he and Will were just marvelous actors. Ralph was a New Yorker. He was a theater actor. He'd actually been a minister before he went into acting. So that's something that a lot of people don't know, and it's, I think, very interesting. He was very down to earth, and he had that kind of self-deprecating humor, and he was such a wonderful actor to work with. The thing about Ralph's acting, he would be sitting at the dinner table talking, and then the camera would roll, and then the director would say action, and you couldn't tell that he'd started to act. You didn't see like, oh, now I'm on. Hey, he just kind of rolled into it. It was just all so natural and so real, and he was just brilliant. And also, I mean, this is not a secret. Ralph was actually an alcoholic when the Waltons started, and he decided, shortly after the series started filming, that he couldn't honestly play that character and show up in the morning on the set hungover. He just said, this is not going to work. So he stopped drinking. He went to AA. And after that, he sponsored a great many other people, got them into the program. And many people today say, they're sober, however many years, thanks to Ralph Waite.
Actually, Michael said that. And during the interview,
yes.
She said exactly the same thing. And
Yes.
Also, you mentioned about Ralph's acting, how he's very subtle. Funnily enough, I was speaking this week to one of the actors, and that was one of the questions a fan sent in. There was an episode where Ralph, in fact, I can't remember if it was The Homecoming or not, but there's an episode where Ralph walks past Elizabeth and just sort of rubs her, tweaks her on the cheek and walks past. And someone had asked if that was scripted because it just looked so natural, just exactly what you said.
Yes. It probably wasn't scripted. A lot of those little things just came naturally, and those are the kind of real touches that you want to have, when they just happen, when they just occur naturally, then it's very real, and that's how it comes across on screen.
I think it was Judy was telling me about the time that Will and Richard mooned a tour bus that was coming past. I don't know if you remember that one.
I think I don't know that they meant to moon the tour bus, but I think that just happened. But yes, we had some fabulous outtakes and gag reels that were made from the outtakes on the Walton set. And yes, one day they had a scene where they were in a hot spring together. Grandpa and John were talking in the hot spring, and then at the end they both decided to pull down shorts and moon the camera at the end of the shot. And it just so happened that it wasn't a bus, actually, it was a walking tour through the studio. And they just came around the corner as Will and Richard flashed.
They were in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yes, absolutely. Timing is everything. The secret of comedy is timing.
Let's take another couple of questions from the fans. There was an interesting one from someone who seems to know their stuff when it comes to music and guitars. Now, let me just find the question. Here we are. This is from Douglas Leftwich. Could you ask Jon about the Martin acoustic guitar he used on the Waltons? To those who know the characteristics of a pre-war Martin acoustic, it was obvious his guitar was from a later time. I believe he still has that Martin. Ask him what year it was actually made.
Right. Well, that's very, very observant. There were two, actually. I used two different Martins on the show. And one was a model D18 that was made in 1965. And that actually, it's a beautiful guitar. It's a guitar that my parents bought for me after I started playing. I was 9. And it's a very fine guitar. I was very, very, very lucky that they bought that instrument for me. And it ended up being used extensively on the show. And I still have it. It's sitting on a stand in my studio at the moment because I play it all the time. And there was another one, a very small body guitar called a 518. And that one was made 1958. So they were both post-war Martins. I'm not exactly sure what the spec changes were, but obviously, someone who's a real historian of Martin guitars would know that. But it was something that actually didn't escape the Martin company. They actually contacted me and said, "Well, we noticed you're using our guitars, and I hope that would mean I'd get a free one, but it didn't work that way."
I think they would have given you a free one after all the advertising you gave them.
No, about it. I've been playing it for 50 years now. Where's my guitar? Where's the Jon Walmsley model? Come on.
This guy's just blatantly mentioned that the Martin guitar was associated with you. Come on. It's never too late. You never know. You might get one in the post. Okay, another question from the fans. Hi Jon, just wondering if you mostly chose the music that you played on the show, or if it was selected for you. Specifically thinking about you playing the song Beautiful Dreamer on the recorder from the episode of The Gift. What a beautiful and emotional episode. And that's from Terry Higgins from Greenwood, Missouri. I think that will be Missouri.
Right? Is it M-O, is that it?
M-O, yeah, Greenwood, M-O.
M-O, yeah, that's the story, right. Most of the music was chosen by the producers. And, it had to be period correct. So, if we were doing a 1935 episode, obviously it had to be written before then. And, and pretty much a lot of the music was chosen because it was public domain, meaning that the copyright had run out and they wouldn't have to pay anything to use it. There was an episode where it was Olivia's birthday, and they didn't want us to sing Happy Birthday because Happy Birthday is a very expensive song. There were two older women who had for the tune Happy Birthday. And I think they both passed on long ago. But anyway, this was, I guess, the 70s, and it cost an arm and a leg to sing Happy Birthday in a television show. So they said, Jon, just write a Happy Birthday tune for Olivia. So I did, and, that's a really tall order, and I have to say I wrote the most dreadful birthday song, and I cringe every time I think about it. Because the producers were too cheap to use the real song. Commonly, I'll just say one more thing about that subject. That's why if you hear, instead of happy birthday in a show, if you hear, for he's a jolly good fellow, that's free.
Ah, so that's public domain.
So,
I understand that actually that legislation, because I worked on the recent Stan and Ollie movie as a consultant. I'm a big Laurel and Hardy
did you
fan.
really?
Yes, and
Oh, I'm a fellow. Good for you.
absolutely love Laurel and Hardy. And the same thing happened for them to use just a snippet of. It was crazy. I mean,
Right.
the cost was just crazy to use a little bit of the theme tune. And actually, one of the topics that came up during my research for Laurel and Hardy, I had found out about Ellen Corby, and that she worked for Hal Roach as a script girl, and she appeared in a couple of Laurel and Hardy movies with them. So, what's your memories of Ellen?
Oh gosh. Well, Ellen spoke very fondly about her days as a script girl and working at Hal Roach with Laurel and Hardy, and I think she was particularly uh, fond of Oliver Hardy, who she always called Babe.
Yes,
She always called him that.
that's his nickname. Yeah.
Right, right, and yeah, I mean, it's so amazing to me that she had that experience, and it just those days as a script girl gave her the most wonderful foundation for the technical side of her acting, because the script supervisor on the set has to remember or write down every move that all the actors make, what they do in each take, so that in the subsequent shots they'll do the same thing.
For continuity.
So we would do exactly. We'd be doing a scene, and then you'd have a certain line, and you'd put your hand, on your chin, and then we'd be shooting another take, and they'd say, I forgot to put your hand on your chin, that kind of thing. So that carried over into Ellen's acting. She was really a perfectionist, and she remembered all those things for herself, and she would sometimes remind us when we needed to remember to do something. But on the personal side, we just had a wonderful relationship. She had no grandchildren. I had no grandparents. My grandparents had passed on at that point. So we adopted each other. And she was so very, very supportive of me and my music. And often when she would be invited to an event, like an Emmy Awards show or something like that, she would invite me to go as her guest and her date, really. So it was just wonderful. And there's photos, I think you can see some online, where we were at some of those award shows, and we had just the greatest time together. She was a much more modern woman than Grandma. She was a world traveler, and she'd gone to India, and she'd studied transcendental meditation with the Maharishi, and she was a very, as they say, with it grandma.
Wow, wow. Everybody fondly remembers Ellen. We've had some great stories over the past few days. We'll take another question from the fans. John, how long did it take to learn to play all the instruments you played on the Waltons? That's from Rebecca in Kentucky.
Yes, hi Rebecca. I'm still learning. Seriously, it's a lifelong thing. Once you get the bug and you're addicted to playing music, it's an obsession. You never stop, and you never stop learning. But guitar was my first instrument, and gosh, I'd say within the first year of playing guitar, I was out doing little shows, live shows, playing and singing. Depending, some instruments are more difficult than others. Guitar it's fairly easy to pick up a little. If you want to just learn, you can learn, 3 chords, and you already know lots of tunes then with just 3 chords. So there's not a big kind of a ramp up to doing that. Whereas, if you try to learn the violin or something like that, it's very, very technical. And until you learn to hold it properly and hold the bow and move your arm in the right way and finger the notes in tune because you don't have any frets and get the vibrato down and all that. I mean, it sounds like a dying cat until you just, can make a good sound. And then if you stick with it, then you can go from there.
What's the most unusual instrument that you play?
I don't think I really play any unusual instruments. I think they're all very conventional, guitar and bass and keyboards and drums. And, I played the cello in school, studied the cello, played classical music. That was wonderful training. So, but nothing odd like a musical saw or anything like that. Although I had a friend who did. He played the musical saw, and he played it beautifully. I mean, it was a lovely sound, and he got this beautiful singing tone out of it and vibrato. It was really nice.
And I think I've heard the saw, and it is beautiful. Stan Laurel does it in one of his movies. He sort of mocks it, but when you do it seriously, it gets a really, really nice effect. Let's talk about your favourite. Did you have a favourite episode of the Waltons that you particularly enjoyed filming?
Well, there were a lot, but I always say, I mean, that's a very common question. I get asked that a lot, and I always say The Gift with Ron Howard, the one you mentioned where I played the recorder, because I like, I grew up watching Ron Howard on television, although he's probably a couple of years older than me, not much. But I watched him on television before I ever started acting. He was acting on television. He started very young, and yeah, it was a lovely thing actually when he first came on the set. And he was walking toward me, and I was so looking forward to meeting him. And the first thing he said was, "You're the guy everybody says I look like." Their dad, Rance Howard, was an actor as well, a lovely actor. And he was one of the actors who played the doctor on the Waltons.
Oh.
So, we used to chat a lot on the set, a lovely man. And I would say, "So how's Ron? How's Clint doing?" So, yeah, it was great. And actually, interestingly, Ron Howard used that episode of the Waltons. He was up for a part in a John Wayne film, John Wayne's last film, actually, called The Shootist. And he got the part by showing the producers, his Waltons episode.
Yeah. There was quite a few actually guest stars came through the Waltons. Which ones stand out to you? Obviously, there was John Ritter.
Right. John Ritter was great. We loved him. He kept us in stitches all the time on the set. And someone this week mentioned Sissy Spacek, who was wonderful and a lovely person. And oh gosh, there were so many. I remember Noah Beery Jr. There was an actress, Jean Marsh. Do you remember Jean Marsh from Upstairs, Downstairs?
I remember Upstairs, Downstairs.
Yeah, she was one of the regulars in that. And there were so many. Dean Jagger. I had an episode working with Dean Jagger, who was an Oscar winner for was it 12? It was a war film. I think, was it 12 O'Clock High? He won the Oscar for. Anyway, to work with these people who were, directors or actors, and we had directors. We had directors on the Waltons who directed Betty Davis in her early films at Warner Brothers. So there were really a lot of people, and gosh, our cinematographer, Russell Metty, was one of the old school guys who won an Oscar for a film called Exodus. And he actually used the old style equipment. He didn't use the most modern equipment. He said, "You want the show to look classic?" He said, "I can make it look like an old film. I'll use the old equipment." So he had the old cameras, and he had these big arc lights where they used to have to put a piece of carbon in and light it on fire and the smoke out the top of the lamp. And those were out of use then. It was much newer stuff, lighter, more portable stuff that had come in. And we used the clunky old stuff, and that's why those episodes look like a 1930s film.
Jon, we've just totally ran out of time, but I want to thank you for taking the time to come on today, first of all. And I've been chatting to Mary over the past few weeks about the possibility of bringing the actors over to the UK to do some events over here, because you do have a big fan base. You're already here. It would be so good to bring everybody over.
Yeah, it would be great fun. We'd have a wonderful time.
So special thanks to you for watching and tuning into today's interview with Jon Walmsley, another great guest from the Waltons. Tune in tomorrow for another interview. Tomorrow's guest, Judy Norton, who plays Mary Ellen. We'll see you then.